All right, you loyal listeners. Welcome to another episode of Agency Intelligence, where I'm giving you that real agency intelligence and not that artificial that they try to make you believe out here. I'm back today with my main man, Cruz. Say what up, Mike.
The great Jason Cass.
That's right. And if you guys know, every time I call him, he pretty much answers that same way. He goes, Jason Cass. It's really funny. Sometimes, Michael, when I'm somebody will be in the room and I'm calling you, I'm like, watch, this is how he's going to answer. It's always funny. It's so funny. So, Michael, okay, so first of all you loyal listeners, the reason for the name, as you saw when you hit the play button, was the continuation of part 2 of the 4-day work week. That's what Michael calls it. I call it the 3-day off week. I know that sounds weird, but I just like to be different. You guys know that. You're a loyal listener. And people have hit me up. Billy Van Juro is one. Casey Thompson is another. Who've hit me up and said, Jason, are we going to get a part 2? Are you still doing the 4-day work week or the 3-day off week? Same thing. And yes, the answer that you all wanted to know, I got right to the top point a minute and 15 seconds into this podcast. Yes, I'm still doing it, and Michael Cruz is still doing it. Okay. So I never call you Mike, and all of a sudden 2 times in this first minute and a half I've called you Mike. I know you're Michael. I always call you Michael. I say your name 700 times a day. So for any of you guys that don't know, before we get on with this, Michael and I both own Virtual Intelligence. So it is a virtual employee company, not virtual assistant company. And we provide virtual employees and put them in your agency, but we use the new model. I call it the model 2.0. The old model of, hey, you need somebody here, here's a person that's not licensed and half the cost, there you go. That's old and dead. That doesn't work anymore. A lot of you are frustrated because you've said to yourself, Jason, I've tried this VA model and it doesn't work for me. Of course, it didn't work for about 80% of people out there that tried it. We realized that. So when I left my VE company that I was with, the third one, and created my own, I did it out of necessity, right? I needed somebody to help me with my commercial book. Michael had the same problem. He can't find quality, so he finally created out of necessity of his agency. He's a high volume personal lines agency. So where he needed them on the front side, we needed them more on the back side, meaning doing the applications, the quoting, the different, we're dealing with the underwriters. He needed them more, and he needed them to do that too. But he needed them, he's got 200 phone calls coming in a day, folks. 200! Now, some of you are sitting there going, wow, I wish I had 200 because you're more than that. But majority of you are less than that. He has a very high volume office. And so he created these forward facing VEs that were just fantastic. We got together. We merged our companies early in April. And we have tripled the size of our business just since then. It has been a fantastic ride. Now, how did we do it? I know this isn't a commercial of VI, but it's important that it kind of flows into what we're talking about here on the 4-day work week. We decided that we were going to put people inside of an office, but we were going to equip them with technology. So not only were you getting rid of your labor woes of trying to find somebody, but now you've always wanted to bring technology into your office. You didn't know how to do it. You didn't know what technology to get. You didn't know what was perfect. So now you do. We listen to you. We not only just say you need a VE, we also have partners with tech companies. We train the VEs in it. We put them in your office. They start answering the phone. They can answer the top 10 to 15 questions that any agency gets within 30 days of them putting in the agency. But not only that, they also can do the quoting. We can do 5 to 10 carrier quotes in less than 3 to 7 minutes. That's right. Give me an auto and home, and we can do that quote. Now, that's at our agency, okay? Other agencies that are our clients, they're doing those quotes in anywhere between like 10 to 20 minutes for 2 reasons. It takes a minute for the VE to get efficient, but it also, the more you use AI and RPA, the faster it gets too for knowing your agency. Right. We've been using it for 1.5 years. Some of you guys haven't been, but the point is, we put these people in your agency. Now, that's important to know because I'm just going to say it, Michael. Without it, I don't know if we could do what we're on this podcast to talk about doing. Michael, correct. Go ahead and take it away. Introduce yourself. Open up. I've talked for the first 4 minutes. Now you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure, and I'm so happy that we came together. I think we're both experiencing different challenges, and we realized, we can play to each other's strengths. And we've seen that, in a few short months. I mean, we skyrocketed in terms of what we've been able to accomplish with having the right people in the right seats. And it has allowed me also to like grow my agency with this partnership, right? Because I've gained some tools that I didn't have access to before. And this whole journey started because the hard market really was taking a huge toll on my agency. I really was worried about my staff burning out. I've never seen anything like it, and I just couldn't find a way to really. It doesn't matter how much people I hired or what I did. It just was never enough. We were getting beat up from customers. The carriers were changing guidelines every week, and in the midst of that, I realized, had a realization that since the 1920s, when Henry Ford started the assembly line, we've had the same kind of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 type of setup, and he took it from I think it was 80 hours to 60 hours. So, we have been going down in hours worked, but it's just mind blowing to me that even 100 years later, we're still working the same 40 hours Monday through Friday, and our technology has skyrocketed, So it really got me thinking into all right, how can I have a better work-life balance for my employees, because selfishly, I want them to stay around, you know what I mean? So it is something good that comes from me, but also I'm a business owner and I want to keep these people. So I needed to figure out a way to improve work-life balance without disrupting my operation, right? Because, at the end of the day, if we don't have customers, we don't have jobs, so, and that's kind of when I started that journey of the 4-day work week. But I was looking at YouTube videos, I was reading books. There was nothing really that gave you a roadmap on how to do this. It was really frustrating. I went a month down this rabbit hole. And then the craziest thing is why don't I just put this idea into ChatGPT, tell it what I'm trying to accomplish, and dude, within seconds, I got the blueprint of what my 4-day work week is. And I'm why didn't I think of that before? And then, ever since then, I've been using ChatGPT every day, as you know. But that's kind of what got me started in this whole journey. It's I gave it the ideas, and then he gave me the rules of the game, and we just take it off and keep adding to it.
So just so you guys know, as he continues on, I'll give him a break here. I joke with him all the time that I hope he has stock in OpenAI, because this dude, once again, guys, we work with each other daily. He uses ChatGPT for so many things. And Michael, how many times do I say to you, I'm like, holy crap, dude, I would not have went that in depth with it or thought of it that way. And it's just about taking our problems that we speak about at board meetings or leadership meetings and putting them in there and say, well, let's see what this thing says. It's remarkable how smart that son of a bitch is. It really, really is. It's getting to the point where it's what did we do before this? Right? If I needed to write out an NDA, right? If I'm just making that up, you could just go in there and say, hey, here's my agency, here's the situation, here's the people, here's what we do, write an NDA for it, and poof, it just does it. We used to have to go copy one, find one off Google, then try to make it what we were, and then we're taking something and it's just terrible. Anyways, we already know. So you're doing fantastic. So tell us about, after ChatGPT come about, when was this in the year that you started doing this, and when did you put it in place?
I think this was around February or March, which was coincidentally around the time we were going to the merger. And I talked to my team about it, and everybody was kind of yeah, it sounds good, but I don't think you're going to do it. But once I had, once I had the actual game plan, one day I just told my operations manager, you know what, here's the game plan. We're just going to pull the plug and do it. Let's just do it. Let's just try it. I'm sure as we do it, we're going to find, holes in this process. And that's exactly what happened. On April 29th, which was, kind of the last day of the week for April, is kind of when we started this whole 4-day work week. So the way we did it is we, kind of created a roadmap and writing of what this thing would look like. So what I decided is that we would all work Mondays, but then Tuesday through Friday, we would rotate those days, because I didn't want somebody calling me on a weekend like, Michael, am I working, tomorrow or not? So I didn't want that to be an issue. And then Mondays are our busiest days. So we rotate, Tuesday through Friday. And then what we had to do is we had to create departments. So, for example, I have a licensed sales, licensed service, front-facing, non-licensed, and then back office, non-licensed. And then I had to break it down so we always had coverage in each department every single day. So we rotate the days. And when we started this whole journey, we kind of allowed people to switch days. But it became a full-time job from my operations manager and myself to create schedules every single month. So what we kind of ended up is like, hey guys, I set on the schedule. This is a fixed schedule. If it doesn't work for you, then you need to use your PTO, and then you just lose that work day, the 4-day work week. So I made it so that on days that we have holidays, for example, that Columbus Day that would just happen, or Indigenous days, you're not gonna get that extra 4-day work week. That is your extra day that week.
Right.
Or if you use your PTO or a sick day, then you're not gonna get that additional 4-day work week. So that's kind of been the way that I've been able to manage it, because I tell people it's a privilege, right? I'm giving you this as a privilege. It's not mandatory for me to do it. So and at the end of the day, we need to have consistency with our operation. Like, we cannot have gaps in coverage in terms of the departments.
Yeah. Michael, and so I about the same time, Michael started telling me this stuff, and I thought he was just telling it to me because we were drinking a lot. But no, he started telling it to me, and I'm like, no, he's being serious. Like, he's going to really give these people a time off. So that's when I said to him, Michael, like, explain to me how you're going to do this, da-da-da-da-da. And then what I did is I watched him through the month of May. And then after about the second or third week, I remember I called you, Michael, and I'm like, okay, Michael, I'm thinking about putting this together and starting June. And you were like, whoa, Cass, hey, there's a couple things we didn't realize. I'm like, Michael, are you still doing it? And he's like, yeah, we're doing it, but had to kind of change up a couple things. And I think that had to do with the sales process. Could you give us a little snippet of that?
Yeah, no, great point. So before, it wasn't as hard for us to implement it, because many years ago, we started basically servicing as a team. So we round robin our team when it comes to service. We divide the calls, divide the task. We didn't have that process in sales. So I basically had to create the same kind of, shared work for sales. So we created one email for the sales. So I told my sales teams, any emails that you send for quotes and you receive is going to be received through this shared email. And the reason we need that, because on the day that you're going to be out, the other sales team is going to get your back, or I'm going to have to step in. And if the lead is calling back to activate the policy, we don't want to lose that lead. So we had to kind of rethink the whole sales process. So now we service and sell as a team, and it's taking some learning curve. And every time we run into issues is because we don't have a documented process. So we all meet, we agree on a process, we document it, and now we have a way of doing business. But it was a little bit of a learning curve with the sales, because sales team is a little bit, everybody wants to do their own thing, and it was convincing them, guys, it's not about you doing your own thing, it's about doing it the Foresight way. We all should be doing the Foresight way, because if you can do the Foresight way and you take time off, I'm able to have somebody, get your back. And on top of that, if I bring somebody new, I can teach them the Foresight way. But if everybody's doing different things, I can't teach that.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And so I had kind of the same look. Keep in mind, Michael is the sole owner of Foresight. I have 50-50 owner with Travis. So he was the first person I had to get on board. And to be honest with you, Travis is so used to my crazy shit that I'm always trying to do for real. He was kind of like, Cass, are you serious? We're going to give him a day off? He's like, because he doesn't think that they work hard enough anyways. And I'm totally joking when I say that, but that's just the mentality of Travis. Travis is a high achiever. He is a grinder. This dude gets it. So he expects everybody else to be that way. But I have to tell you, in the last 10 years of being his business partner, he has matured enough to realize that not everybody can be like him or be like me. And so I got it past him. He was like, okay. And so when I went to the team and I told them all, we're just going to do it as a test. If it works out going forward after that, we're going to do it for June, July, and August. And no matter how messy it gets in June, we're going to keep doing it in July, okay? And why I had that confidence, loyal listeners, was I knew it was working for Michael. Right? So I'm one of those people that, like, when someone comes to me with a problem and they say, you can't do this, I immediately think of the million other people that are doing it and go, no, actually it can be done. We just haven't found the way, right? So that's the way that I thought with Michael. So we started out, Michael, same thing. I didn't get that from you. I started with like, okay, what my thing was is everybody would have this day off, and then the next week you would get the next day off, and then the next day. So not everybody's on the same day. Whoop, that was a nightmare. Kick that shit out right in July. Okay, I just said finally, I've created another schedule for July because the vacations and stuff, people were moving around. I said that's it. Starting in August, I did the same thing. I said, here's the set schedule. This is what everybody is. I took it one step further. Michael did tell me about the Monday thing. And Michael, I thought you were doing like I'm doing. That's why I did it. I thought you did Monday and Fridays. Everybody had to be in. Yours just Monday only?
Just Monday, yeah.
Okay. In my office, it's Mondays and Fridays. Everybody's in the office. The only days that we have off are those Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Now, because we went to 3 days that people could be off, I had to double up a lot of people because we have around 11 people. So I kind of had to double that up. But we got that figured out. The problem we did is we did it by departments. And that didn't work very well. That works kind of well for us. And this is the thing, loyal listeners. I was going to do this podcast, but I stopped it and invited Michael on because I want you to know that my way is not the only way. Michael and I are doing this successfully, and we're doing it different ways. A lot of it's the same, but we did it that way. Now, one of the problems we realized was like we have 2 people who are really good on the phone. So I knew immediately I couldn't have both of them off on the same day, right? As long as one of those was here, I would be good. Yep. So that eliminated that problem. I only have one a licensed senior account manager. And the way that my agency split up, folks, is that I have 2 VEs on the personal line side, and I have 3 VEs on the commercial line side. Anything they can't do, they bring it up to a senior account manager who's licensed. Well, that was kind of an issue, right? Because I had to make sure, number one, that if anything licensed comes about, well, what I did is on the day that she's gone, I mandate that my producers have to stay in the office, right? So I tell them, you can set your things anytime you want, but when Sarah's gone, which is usually on Thursday, they need to be in the office. And if they have a reason like, hey, I've got a meeting I've got to be at, well, then me or Travis just to make sure. As long as we have some licensed person in here that can handle that. Not only that, Marvin, my lead VE, he's not licensed, but the dude can do anything that we need to get done anyways, okay? Same with Lordland on the personal line side. So they were able to handle that. The other thing that we learned too, though, Michael, and I didn't get that from you, was same thing. You get a day off, that's your day off. You decide, even if you're sick, and that's your day off, and the reason is like, well, I was sick, I still shouldn't lose my day off. No, I agree with that. But at the same time, people will start to abuse it because now it'll be like, oh, well, I'm sick because I've got tomorrow off, so now I get a 4-day week or 4-day weekend. So I didn't want to, no one in my office did that, but I didn't want to set that up as something that could be tempting, right? So I just eliminated that. Yeah, it's working fantastic. It's working.
And I'll tell you some findings that I've had with this 4-day work week. I've have a lot of my staff that have kids, and on the weekends, they got a bunch of things they got to do with the kids. So they don't really have like an off day on the weekends. But during the week, because the kids go to school, now they can, do their own thing. They can go to a coffee shop. They can go to the beach. Yep. Whatever they want to do, that's their true day off where they can do their personal things. And, most of the time, like, you were waiting for the weekend to do that. So I think it's really rethinking the work-life balance. And like I told people, like I think you taught me this actually with Maslow's law, in terms of, you're going to maximize the time that you have, right? So now you have 4 days. So I've been tracking of my task. Jason, we've been doing the same or more tasks than before. And they were working 5 days a week. So how is that possible? Because of what you said, right? So they're just, because that's the time they have, they're knocking out the task within that time that they have.
Now, loyal listeners, I'm going to blow your mind. And this is something that Michael doesn't even know about, because as I was thinking about this podcast this morning, for everybody who doesn't know, I wake up at around 4:30. I immediately I get in my clothes, and I just drive straight to the office. So I'm here around 5:30 in the morning. I sit here till around 7. Then I go meet my wife at the gym. I go home, take a shower, and I come back to office. So early in that morning, I'm really, really diving into some stuff. Michael, I think this is probably going to blow your mind because it blew my mind, okay? So I started thinking to myself, first of all, loyal listeners, I need to preface this. Inside Virtual Intelligence, we have something that's called Insight. Okay, and Insight is a tracking software that we use. So we can tell you if you have a virtual employee with us, what they're doing, what websites they're on, is their mouse moving, and they're on a Teams call. I mean, it does everything. And I'm just going to tell you, it is a really, really high performance tracking system. And unless you're a big company like us that has a lot of people, it's probably too expensive for you and other things like that. But here's what we found out. Now, this sounds funny, and I don't want to go too far into it, loyal listeners, because you just have to understand there's a reason for this. When we're looking at our people to see how productive they are, we know that anywhere between 50 to around 75% productivity is good. If they're doing over 70 to 80%, which we do have some VEs that do that, some of these high achieving VEs, but that's a very rare thing. They can get burnt out quickly. If they're below 50%, even kind of getting up around 60 or below, we know that they're not doing enough, and we can start to look at it, and we can set timers and alerts that allow us to be able to track that, right? You're trusting us that the employee that we're putting in your office is doing the work. We want to be able to say officially that we do know that for a fact, even though they're in another country. So let's just say 70%. So Michael, check this out. In my office, we work 8:30 to 4:30. 8:30 to 4:30 is an 8-hour day. We give them 1 hour off for lunch. That means they're working 7 hours. They get a day off. So what is 7 times 4? 28. Our people is really working 28 hours a week. Let me even take it further. If we follow the insights and we say that this person is 70% productive, which essentially means they're using 70% of their time in a rough sense, and I take 70% of 28 hours, that comes down to be 19.6 hours a week.
That's crazy.
19.6 hours a week. I didn't tell Michael about this, and did you hear what Michael said right before I started talking this? The same level of work is being done on 4 days as it is 5.
Mm-hmm.
My people are working 19 to 20 hours, like actually working, like literally they're working da-da-da-da-da. Yes, they're at the office, but they're only at the office even for 28 hours. But yet, we're growing in high 30%, and that's not true. That's rate increases, but really we're growing anywhere where Travis and I have always said if we can grow at 15%, we're happy. For anybody who wants to know, if you grow your agency 15% in 5 years, you double it. It's math. Right. It happens. It doesn't matter how big your agency is. Look it up and do the math. So if we can grow, that's always been Travis and I's thing. If we grow 15%, right now we're growing around 15, 17, 18% after rate increases. And we're still growing by that much, even though now 4 months we've been doing this. 20 to 28 hours a week is what our people. Now you tell me how more refreshed they feel when they're at work. Tell me how more they enjoy their weekend when they actually had a day in the middle of their week that they could do their own stuff like you said they wanted to do, right? This is a totally new way of thinking. And I imagine that a lot of you sitting here listening to this right now are probably thinking the same way other people were telling Henry Ford when he was trying to go from 60 hours to 40 hours. That was probably a monumental thing. Like, what are you doing? You are collapsing the American work system. And here we are now at 40 and realizing that that's not going to work. What do you think about that, Michael? That was this morning I came up with that shit.
That is mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing that they're doing the same amount of work in half of the time. They're taking, from 40 hours to 20 hours. I mean, I'm just blown away. But, think of it like this. Like, we have an industry that is not considered the sexiest industry. People want to do a bunch of other things, work at Google, be a realtor or be an investor, be all these other stuff. But insurance, that is like, I don't want to do that. What if we as an industry, we kind of, spearhead this whole thing of like, hey, we don't need to work 5 days a week to be productive, and, we lead by example. And, selfishly as business owners, we will do better. We're going to attract better talent because who doesn't want a 4-day work week? We're going to produce more, and we're going to just shift the whole mindset of like, hey, guys, this is the way to go. This is the new way to go. It's not, don't think about, I can't do it. Think about, how can I do it? Don't close your mind and shut it down right away. And that's the biggest challenge that when I talk to people about it, they're just giving me all these excuses why it cannot be done. But if you shift your thinking to saying, hey, how can I do it? And that's what I had to do to make this work. It hasn't been a walk in the park, but I tell you, for my staff to leave, they've done studies, they got to get paid at least 25% more, to basically go somewhere else. So, it's a huge retention tool. Like you said, when they get that break in the middle of the week, they're going to come back, recharge. They're more productive. It does take some getting used to, and then there is a learning curve. but it can be done, and it should be done.
It does. And I got to tell you, you know what was great? I put Sarah Beard, and my head administrator, obviously, in charge of this. And when we were going through the issues in the first couple of weeks, Michael, she would come to me and say, Jason, I want you to know there's no one working harder to try and make this work. But I got to tell you, there's some issues we're running into.
There you go.
But it was cool because most of the time it would be, Jason, we just can't do this, right? But because they were the ones that were benefiting from it, it was like they were doing everything they could to try to help me make it work.
Yes.
And I thought that was just great. I think it's really well said what you said. Michael, I'm just going to be truthful here for a minute with a lot of our loyal listeners. Loyal listeners, if you can't do this, it's not because of you. I really bet it's probably because you have a team that leads you and you don't lead them. Oh, God. Oh, I know that hurts, but it's Jason's job is to tell you the truth. I'm not going to sit here and create a podcast and waste my time and give you bullshit. The reason why you don't want to do this is because you've got people in your office that won't allow it to happen. Now, you think that because every time you come up with a new technology or a new process or a new thing, they're the one that pushes back. Did you just hear what I just said about Sarah? This actually benefits them. The people who are the hardest heads that don't want to ever conform, whenever you say to them, hey, let's try to make this work so you get more time off, it would just be the weirdest person in the world who would say, no, I'm just going to be bitter and want to work 5 days a week, right?
Right.
So this is actually something that you can easily get your team to help you do. You got to do like I did and sit the team down, just like Michael did. They're all going to look at you like you're freaking crazy, okay? Even your business partners are going to do it. But give them this podcast. Go give them the podcast I did back when I first did it and give them this podcast now. And me and Michael will come back at the end of the year and we'll even talk about it more. But Michael, I don't know about you, but it's so routine now. No one knows anything. We all know that these two people are off on Tuesdays. These two people are off on Wednesday. These three people are off on Thursday. We just all know that now. We just all know that.
It's become the norm.
It's become the norm.
Normal, yeah.
It's become the norm. It's become the norm. Okay. Loyal listeners, we're going to wrap this up. I hope you got something out of this, but we're going to take just a couple minutes and we're going to talk about something that I really have been thinking about lately, and it just kind of got me. Michael doesn't know about this, and Michael, I'm going to talk to you about it, okay? Me and you will have the conversation. Michael, have you ever sat around before and thought to yourself, maybe when you were 30, or maybe how old are you, Michael? 35?
35, yeah.
35, I thought so. Okay, so you're 35, and you sit around and you think to yourself, what would I tell the 20-year-old Michael? We've all done that, right?
Yes.
I've done that. What would I tell the 20-year-old Michael? What would I tell the 25-year-old Michael, right? And it's not about what you would tell it, but Michael, and don't get into details, but you're thinking in yourself like, I would tell him this, I would tell him that. And it's those things that we look back on, and why we do that is where we look at where we are today. And that's why we're looking back to see who we are, right? That was 15 years ago, Michael. Right? You're 35. You talk to the 20-year-old.
Right.
Why don't we live like the 50-year-old is talking to the 35-year-old? Why do we have to wait to get to be 50?
Right.
To say, I wish I would have told this to Michael when I was 35. When you're 35 right now. I think we can all take a big leap forward in who we are if we can start living like the person we want to be at the age of 50 like we are at the age of 35.
Right.
I think if we really start to walk along that, we can start to see that who we are is who we are today, right? Is who we're going to be. Because our brain is nothing really more than a predictor of the future. But what we do is we do it backwards. We get to be 50, and then we look at the Michael who's 35, right? We get to be 30, and we look at the Michael who's 20. Why don't we live to be 35 and think, what would the Michael who's 50 want out of me today? I think living that way can really, really try to help us perform not only better, but it actually gets us to where we are when we're 50. And the cool thing about it is when you're 51, you're going to be talking to the 36-year-old, right? So the 36-year-old now needs to be talking to the 51-year-old. And I think if we can live life that way, I believe that is going to help us be a more clear understanding of where we want to go. And I also know that you're going to go where you want to go when you're 50. What do you think about that, Michael?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you look at how the brain works, for example, like my wife, one of her favorite cars is a Defender, and it's just such a beautiful car. But for whatever reason, I had never seen it before. But when she mentioned that to me, now everywhere that I go, I see a Defender. I'm like, oh, there's a Defender. It has always been there. But the reason why I didn't see it before is because I had not told my mind about that thing, and that's why writing goals work, because you write it down and your brain figures out a way to make the way to achieve that goal. And I think what you're onto is exactly what we need to do, is think into the future. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And that's how you're going to be able to achieve it.
Correct. And not who do I want to be and what do I want to do when I'm 50, but when I'm 50, what would he say to the 35-year-old, right? And so we know in our cortex of our brain, in the back of our brain, we have a stem back there. Did you know for a fact, loyal listeners, it only allows one thing in at a time? That's why people who say that they can multitask, it's not true. It's been proven over and over and over again. There are some people who can do two things at the same time, in conjunction with each other, but they can't at the same time. The only thing that can come in there is whatever you're focused on. Now, there is an exception. There is an exception. If I'm thinking about something and it's flowing into my brain, the only thing that takes priority over it is something of amazement or something of fear. And I'll give you an example. If any of you guys have kids out there and you may be sitting around and you're thinking to yourself like, hey, I'm a hard sleeper. Nothing wakes me up. But when we had kids, I could hear the kid crying upstairs, even the smallest thing, because your brain can always hear things while you're sleeping, but it ignores it and blocks it out because it's not focused. But fear or an amazement, the brain literally like stops traffic and lets that through. Right? And so that's exactly what we're going here. When your wife said that Defender, no matter what's going on, when it sees that, like, oh yeah, because that's important to her, right? That's an amazement. Right. And so that's important to her, which makes it important to you. No matter what you're thinking about, it stops the traffic and basically says, oh, whoa, look, there's that Defender, right? Before, without the Defender being there, it was just allowing stuff to go through, and you can only have one thing going through your brain at a time. Folks, you may think, God, what is Jason, a scientist? No, I read a lot. That's what it is. When I decided that I was not going to go to college, I decided that I still needed to get an education. I know there's people out there that read more books than me, but I'm just going to tell you I'm probably in the top 1%. I sound like Donald Trump right now, trying to say I'm the best ever, but I'm really not. Really not Donald Trump either. That guy's an idiot. But anyways, what I do want to say is reading books has got you this and made you think this way. Michael, closing it up on anything that we've talked about, buddy. We're way over time here.
No, I think what you mentioned about, just being a better version of ourselves, I think that is the way to go. And I'm super excited about our future, with what we're doing with virtual intelligence, finding quality people, using technology. Our industry, it's getting harder and harder, but I think we're finding solutions. And, what makes us different is that you and I are in the trenches. We're trying to figure it out. We're not just, talking heads, So everything that we're bringing to people is stuff that we're actually doing. And I don't know where my agency would be if we didn't have this, very highly qualified labor, from around the world, And it's definitely my advice to everybody is like, hey, we have to embrace the change. You have to be willing to try new things, and you have to be willing to fail, because in those trials is where really you grow, But if you just don't want to change and you stay stale, you're gonna fall behind,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right in the change. So right in the change. Last night I was on Facebook, loyal listeners, and I'm sitting there scrolling through just like I do in the middle of the night, and not in the middle of the night. It was right before I went to bed. And this guy said, if the only way you can meet with me is by me booking a link on your Calendly, then we don't need to meet, and I don't want to meet with you. And it really struck me. I'm like, okay, I can see maybe this guy's old school or whatever. Then I looked and he had like 67 comments. And so I clicked, and it's just, I start reading, and the comments are, I'm with you, this is stupid, I'm with you, this is dumb, I can get behind this. And I started realizing, wow, loyal listeners, there's so many of you that are stuck behind. And not just stuck behind, if you don't want to use the link to set a Calendly invite. This is about the change that he's talking about. That's okay. You don't have to. But please be open-minded to why we use the Calendly link, right? Be open to the fact that for me and you to go back and forth for 4 or 5 times to try and sync our calendars up is a waste of time. Keep in mind that every time I want to have AI, we use a thing called attention that sits on all of our calls and keeps track and transcribes them, and also delegates the tasks of who it goes to so that makes sure that they get done. That's triggered by the link. Opening up a Zoom and going to have to go to Zoom or Teams and set up a meeting and then send them the link and create a calendar and all invite. That's done by the link. So what I replied to this person was exactly what I just told every one of you guys. And I normally don't reply to this stuff, but I was nice and I knew the guy and I said, hey, here's all the things and this is all the reasons why everything's triggered off that link. It's not just about you trying to do something. It's about the fact that I'm running my organization that way. And so my end thing was to him, with love, it was hashtag said with love. If you don't want to use the link and you want me to waste my time trying to meet with you outside the link, I don't want to meet with you either. And I gave a little smile. And I don't know if it was wrong or right. I normally don't comment on that stuff, but I wanted those 60 people, because you know what it tells me? Most of them were insurance agents. They're not using automation. They're obviously not very efficient. Because if you're not using a Calendly link, that doesn't mean that like you're a bad agent. But it tells me also, like, man, you got to do all that other stuff manually just to set one appointment. And in this world we live in, I've got like 4, 5, 6 appointments a day now that we have Teams. So, it's just, please listen to what he said as embrace the change. It doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to be the change. But there's a reason why the other person is doing it. Sometimes we think it's, he just wants to be the cool kid. No, we're busy. My team only has 19.6 hours to work during the week, and we need to be efficient as can be, because we can't be setting appointments that way like they used to when Henry Ford was trying to get us to go from 60 to 40. They were setting appointments the same way that dude wanted to do in Facebook. So all you loyal listeners, you know what I do, because I do it for you. Tell me your thoughts and tell me your ideas, and I'm going to tell the world what you have to say. This has been Jay Cass and M. Cruz, and we are out.